Hello guys, lovely to see you all. So I've got my cup of tea here and I thought I'd connect with you specifically about self-decided protocols when working in the area of channeling or to do with any work with the idea of spirit beings, or the unseen. So I can only come from my frame of reference. Everyone gets to decide their own protocols and everybody gets to decide how they want to interact with the unseen realms as in outside of the physical 3D. So this isn't a have to, this is an observation for myself, and I'll possibly give a couple of stories of why I have chosen to do it this way. So when I interact with any being, seen and unseen actually, I have a similar thing for the highest and best, and I'm organising it through not only my higher self but the connected inner space of true inner alignment. And the reason I choose to do this now is I have a series of protocols in place, because if I open up clinic, and when I open up clinic and a mass of groups organise themselves around somebody, I'm very clean and clear on the protocols of how they can interact with me, so that there's no massive takeover, and so that we can actually have a useful, constructive and organised, these are my protocols, right? Useful, constructive and organised system of interaction. Now, the reason I have this in place is very much because otherwise, when I haven't in the past, when I was first interacting with what I didn't even know really what it was, there was more of a takeover happening for my physical body and my spirit being than I actually really had a clue. And one particular thing that happened, so this was a number of years ago. I was just pregnant with Charm, so it would have been just before or thereabouts conception, so would have been in 2000 at some point. I had really opened myself within my own space and had somehow accidented upon transitioning souls. Whew. And so even just remembering it's like, oh wow. So somehow, at some level, I had opened up a door or a portal or an observation of transitioning souls who'd gotten stuck. And although I didn't see them in a massive physical form, kind of like as close to our physicality as they were, I could still see them. And the process that I had at the time, without having knowing what I was doing, was they're literally jumping in me and through my belly button, and then transitioning out to the light, out to creator space, out to God, or whatever you want to call it. So this was great. This was entertaining me immensely as I observed at night when I went into my space, and it was entertaining me hugely. And then when I sort of robusted up on that, as in I got to understand what was happening and the interactions and them sharing very quickly, and seeing what was getting in their way and what had happened to them and why all this information passes so fast, that there was a kind of a little addiction that set up inside of me, which I didn't realise. But there was kind of a little addiction to this process of the charge that I would receive through this clearing. And the point where I decided to stop it happening was one night. It's so funny. One night I was laying in bed, and this enormous group, I'm going to guess possibly up to 200 beings, showed up, and they were all from Ethiopia. And there were children, there were babies, there were all genders, all ages. And it had been a vast plague of some kind, some mass death process that had occurred. And they were just leaping inside of my belly button and transitioning to the light. Well, that sounds really cool. That sounds amazing, you know. It actually made me stop after that, because I woke up the next morning and I was physically exhausted because I didn't know how to resource myself. I didn't fully understand the take that it had happened through my body, because at that point there I didn't I was kind of a big part of doing it without realizing it. So I didn't have any protocols in place as to when I would participate in this kind of work. So I then decided, and that was a big turning point for me in life, because at that point there I decided I was only going to work with the living. Yeah, so with the living beings on our planet. That was, so it was one of those tremendous roundabouts in life where I think I could have gone to end up being a medium, and yet I chose to decide to work with the living beings, and so that's where I find myself now, is living beings first, and spirit beings as part of the process. So that was my first set of protocol work. So then other things that came up to me is when, because I could see and feel and sense things, and this is again when I didn't have any protocols in place, and I didn't really know what I was seeing, feeling or sensing, and I went to a place down south, and we were just staying for a weekend in this house, and I could sense so much stuff in that house, but I didn't have a comprehension around what was going on. And one of the beings had been around on the planet for a fair while, stuck in this environment, and had learnt how to touch, so was actually touching me, and it was kind of freaky actually. I didn't really enjoy the process at all, and I had a very disturbed night's sleep. And that was again when I set up a protocol, because this is all around the 2000 mark. It was again when I set up a new protocol of, don't touch me, I'm a human being here on this planet, and if you want to interact with me, then you got to ask permission first. So that's when I began to set up protocols of permission. They could come into my space, and if I acknowledged them, then we could interact. So I set up permissions by my own scope, and I guess with my guides and the spirit beings around me that support me, to actually have a permission factor in place. So not just an assumed, not just someone coming into your house and helping themselves in the fridge, or sleeping in the bed. It's that same thing as you would your own home, your own body, your own awarenesses. Setting up protocols of politeness, protocols that work for me, because if this is the level of work that I'm going to be doing, then it needs to be okay for me, because I'm the human being here on this planet. So those are two good examples of where protocols were set up for me. I've since really cleared them into quite a clean regime. Now I still have beings that desire to talk to me, that will be in the spheres around me, and Stace will probably giggle, because Loki the god was one of those ones where I was still surprised and he wouldn't leave, but he had a real purpose that I needed to hear. And so on that basis, that I acknowledged that that's okay, because it was actually significantly connected to the channeling that Stace and I have done with the oracle cards that we've created. So we did goddesses, we did 13 goddesses, and now we're doing 13 gods. And so the gods we were going to be doing all 26 goddesses first and then the gods, but the gods desired to come through second, so next. So that was a learning again of prioritizing between what's right for us as physical beings, Stacey and I designing these oracle cards and channeling them, and also what the desire is at a greater and higher level. I hope this is useful. All right, so the cleanest and clearest protocol that I have, that I would suggest to anybody that is asking this question, is that any interaction, that there's a permission given by you. Secondly, I always have a question of, are you of the light? Is your intent of a high regard? And if it's not, then I don't actually have that happen now, but if it's not, then there's no space here. I'm not the one. So this was also around a decision that I made probably back in 2000, significant time for me in life, where where it was very clean and clear for high purpose, for the work that I've chosen to be a part of, my purpose on this planet. So instigating that it is of the light. You see, the fourth dimension world, the sort of the space in between our 3D and the fifth dimension planes, and sometimes the fifth dimension, low fifth dimension, love to be seen, love to be witnessed, and there's a lot of busyness inside of there, and there's a lot of stickiness, and from my observation, there's a lot of beings that are moving around just desiring just what the 3D of us wants, our human factor, to be noticed, to be recognized, to be seen. Ultimately, they want to know that they matter, and ultimately that they can transition into a higher realm, a higher space, or I know I'm talking levels, but it's just the best way to just structure it, really, or into a new dimension. But to be honest, it's just like filling your space with something that's not useful. So the low fifth dimension or the fourth dimension environment is very, very busy, and you can spend a lot of time being busy in that space. I personally, for my own, and so like I said, it's a personal thing, I choose not to work in that space. I choose to go clean through it, from higher levels down and through, in order to not waste time, pretty much, not waste time. Now, when we're talking about the fifth dimension realms, there's low vibration and high vibration fifth dimension realms too. So it's possible that you've been attuned into some lower fifth dimensional realms from past lives, or from soul contracts that have been set in place, or from habitual religious practices, even habitual pagan practices, even habitual shamanic practices. So, and this is not a judgment, this is just an observation. We've moved at a vibrational level considerably in the last 20 years. And so we have more access to higher dimensional realms now. And so sometimes in some ways it's time to actually cut the binds, the contracts and the obligations within those lower fifth dimensional realms, because again, it's old information. So if we're channeling old information that's not relevant to what's happening now, unless it's a feed that's useful for somebody to shift and clear, which you will see me work in that area a lot, but that's in order to release people to be able to shift and move forward. Okay. So has that been useful? Has that been useful? I'd love to know. Is there anything else that's useful to cover here? Okay, information from the unseen realm, from different dimensions, different realms, and even different planes, because they're all different. Okay. Will have little portals. They'll have little places that occur. So this is another mention. This is another little story that's interesting. So Stacey and I, a couple of years ago, Stacey was staying at my house in between a Canadian exploration. Stacey and I were delving deeply in our own times in the evenings into possibilities and potentialities and what we could experience and what was available, and again a learning realm. And I went and sat in a vortex. Now, I'd actually had a couple of drinks at this stage, so it's not my recommendation to do channeling in this space of altered states of awareness, but it's up to you entirely. I'd had a couple of drinks and I went and sat in a portal that I'd been attracted to. Now, what was fascinating, Stacey has more remembrance of this, because on the very basis that this was a body takeover that occurred, which is quite different than channeling information. And a fairy, a transitional fairy, leapt into my body and came and had a chat with Stace. And soon enough, Stace actually said, no, we don't want you here. And so she was ordered effectively by Stacey to move on. What was beautiful about this is we connected to the fairies on my property that had a high intent, and Stacey was actually able to communicate directly with Milja, the lovely fairy. Now, I remember being more present when Milja was there, because she had a higher intent. Some magic happened out of that interaction that's just beautiful, and maybe another time that'll be talked about or not. But here's the interesting thing, because it was a body takeover, because I'd actually stepped outside of myself and provided the space for the being to embody me. And being the fairy is pretty little. When she left, when she flew off, my body became like concrete, and I was stuck to the ground for a while. And it took Stace a little bit of time and help to orientate me back into the physical realm. So again, we through these experiences, we have great learnings. I'm now very present. When I'm channeling, very, very present. I'm aware. I don't always recall the exact information. Often it's because it's not for me, it's for the other person. But I know that the interactions are of the light. I know that they're through my higher source. I know that they're through the God space, or the high vibrational sequence, because I've set that up as the absolute condition, the protocol to interact with me. So that's just my learnings, shared quite gut open, and often it's sharing a mistake that we've made that can allow other people to live life differently and have it a little bit easier on their physical body. And this is the reason, because I'm a physical body here on this planet. I have here on this planet, and I have hi Diana, who have we got here? Hi Karen. So our physical bodies are really, really important, and it's been through the process of the last year, especially this year, where I have, because I'm working in higher vibrational realms, that the physical body has become so important to strengthen it, to support it. I use magnesium a lot, and I'm always learning from Karen Crichton in regards to support of the physical body, and probably to the crazy extent of building a real awareness of my physical. Very, very important, because this is the physicality that moves me around moment by moment. And I believe now that it will be able to mean that I can participate for longer periods, because what happens, okay, so this may come across as a judgment, or it may be just an observation, so forgive me for what I'm about to say. But I've observed two different types of people who channel mediums and work with spirit beings. One is they gain a lot of weight. This can be a grounding factor, because I definitely comfort eat afterwards. But I've changed which foods I'm using more and more as Karen Crichton has helped me with this. Karen, that's probably a great other product for you at some point. So more using the proteins rather than the carbs, and a healthier chocolate rather than just going for sugars, so that the rebuild of my body is fast. Now, one of my mentors, I won't name her, but one of my mentors wasn't doing any of this kind of thing, and she actually ended up having quite translucent bones, and her bones were breaking at a very young age, or very soft at a very young age. Yes, it could be saying lack of calcium, and I'm sure, Karen, you can understand that at a higher level. But at one level, she wasn't providing the mineral, that's what it is, the mineral base that her body needed to interact and to balance out the vibrational and interactive spirit work she was doing. So those are the two components that can happen, because if we're not looking after our physical bodies through this process, oh my saliva's all there because I'm enjoying the conversation, we can't separate the spirit from the physical. We really can't, and we shouldn't, but we do in language in order to label it so that we can speak of it. So supporting your physical body before, during and after, working with any being, whether it's physical or non-physical, is for your own sake and your own health and your own wellness and your own practical movement around on this planet is incredibly vital, incredibly paramount, and I'm going to use the word protocol, and a protocol to have in place for yourself. Yeah. So I hope this has been useful. I'm so grateful for anybody who does this level of interaction, and appreciate that you are encoding a new way of possibility with the interdimensional communication realms. And we can do this easily. We can do this without it affecting our sleep. We can do this because I have really, really clean protocols around my sleep. I decide at night whether I'm going to work or whether I'm not going to work. And mostly now I don't work. Yeah, mostly now my sleep is about my body reparation. I don't think that's a word. My body renewal and can't think of the word for it, but repairing, that's what it is. My body repairing. But I used to do a lot of work at night. I used to disappear into the ethers and learn, etc., etc. That's a choice, and I think it's a part of the process. And you can begin to say at night before you go to sleep what you will allow and what you won't allow. Because again, it's your life. Oh my gosh, it's your life. It's not to be taken over by, according to me, it's not to be taken over by this addiction that can come. And it is an addiction. This addiction for, oh my God, look what I can do. Oh my God, look what I can do. Oh my God, look what I can do. Because there's a lot of ego in that. But it's still a part of the process too, and it's okay as we move through that. It really is okay as we move through that, because we share with our close friends, oh my God, this is amazing. This is what I've come across now. So it's a deep sharing, and it's all a part of the process as we're learning to, I guess, mature in the work. Yeah, as we're learning to mature in the work. Okay, I think that's enough. I love you. So this is Karen Janelle Davis. And this is some information for the Frequency Factor group. Love you so, so very much. Bye-bye.